picking, and I don't know if I'd beat him at negotiating. I was like, so how do you win in a world where everyone's better than you at most of that stuff? And I was like, well, I'm pretty good at marketing. And I was like, but how do you tie that to like private equity? And so then it was like, well, if I had more companies walking towards me than anyone else, then I could be pretty terrible at picking and still do like, I could hit the broadside of a barn, like I could get the really easy ones right. And if I'm negotiating, but I'm negotiating only with people who want to do a deal with me, then I don't have to be the best negotiator. And if the companies are good and I'm okay at negotiating, but they're good companies, then it's not going to matter whether I got 29% or 54%, because if the thing becomes 100 times bigger, who cares? And so that one big thing was you need to build a big business brand. And so if I just do that one thing, none of these other things matter. And so originally you'd think, okay, I have to get a broker network. You know what I mean? I might have to raise capital. Like the normal activities that most people would do. But that was one of those kind of like high order of magnitude changes of like what would have to be true for me to be able to outcompete people who are significantly smarter and better capitalized.
Yeah. The ability to see the problem from a different angle, man, is so clutch. That is definitely, you're so good at systems. You're so good at taking a view askew. This is why I really encourage people, anybody, if you can hear the sound of my voice right now, I'm telling you, and I'll take the conversation somewhere political for a second, feel free to dodge as much as you need to. But sure. My thing is the center is a destination. And what I mean by that is I want the friction between the left and the right to help me find an actually intelligent path forward. I want people to help me see the problem from different angles. I don't want to get a hard on from hearing somebody say what I already believe, which is like the big temptation. And I get it, dude. It juices me up as much as it does anybody. But I'm just like, that is not going to help me see the problem from a more clear perspective. So I think of myself as, I'm a terrible debater. Let me be very clear. I'm a deep thinker, but a slow thinker. So debate's never going to be my thing. But I want to know, as if I were going to have to debate this, I want to know the best arguments from both sides. Because if I really understand the smartest people who think that my angle is just idiotic, if I can say, okay, I'm going to steal men's argument, I know their argument as well as they do, and then here's why I believe, which my whole thing is predictive engine to getting you where you want to go, right? So I know my goal, and then what has the most predictive validity. Cool. So I want the collision of those ideas. But there is something in the human brain, just the very architecture where people are so hungry to be told what they already think, that one makes me sad for them. Because if you can do what you just did, which is go, okay, I have a problem, but I need to see this from a totally different angle, and then I need to formalize what I see. If you can do that, and then you're willing to iterate, and go, actually, I need to update this breakdown that I have. And while I haven't seen you do it, I absolutely will bet my entire net worth that if you found a better system, you would update your thinking. You'd tell the world, yeah, I'm doing something differently now, which I think is incredibly powerful.
Oh, thanks. Well, I think Zuckerberg said that he said he's a truth teller, but I think before you can be a truth teller, you have to be a truth seeker. And Bezos also talks about this, which is that their goal is truth. So when we're making decisions, he said, the goal shouldn't be to compromise. Like if you say it's 10 feet tall for the ceiling and I say it's 11 feet tall, we shouldn't meet in the middle. Right. We should find a way to know who's right. We should get a tape measure out and we should measure it.
Yes.
And so from that truth-seeking perspective, I probably, like you, I just want to win. And winning doesn't care whether it was your idea or not, or whether it was your original idea. It just cares whether you did it. And like we recently, because we talked about this before the show started, but like a quarter or two ago, we had a hypothesis, which was, hey, we're going to make wider content because if, Mr. Beast, because my theory was, okay, taking the natural extreme, Mr. Beast, everybody knows who Mr. Beast is, or many people do. And so he has, by default, all business owners in his audience, or many business owners. And so then I will go how do I go wider and general fame. And we then ran that pretty hard for about 16 weeks. And when I saw the data that came back, which was all of the vanity metrics, the views, the subscribers, things like that, were all way up. But the metrics that I cared about, which was how many people were going to acquisition.com, how many people were applying to be portfolio companies, how many people were buying books, all of those metrics were down. And I thought that was it was counter to my hypothesis. But at that point, I had to look at the team and be like, yeah, So that experiment was wrong. And that's on me. But we're going to go what we called back to business. And so everything is going to be business related, which means that we all need to accept now that all of our views are going to be lower. Our subscribers are going to be lower, but we're going to attract business owners. And I had one anecdotal experience that really like cemented this. I had a guy who came out who's a business owner, does probably 10 million bucks a year. And he was like, yeah, I listened to your podcast for years. And I guess I'm not really in your audience. I'm not your core audience anymore. And so I stopped listening to it probably in the last 6 months. And I was like, you are 100% my core audience. Yeah. And that was like this kick to my stomach. But I mean, like you probably, being right has zero value. Like, why? I want to win. Yeah. And so that's, I mean, my little ism for my team is just win. And that's all I care about. Like, just win. And if it's your idea, it's my idea, it's the janitor's idea, test it, see if it works. And so that's been really, really big for me.
How do you get people to buy into that? I find I run into frames of reference, natural ego, evolutionarily placed algorithms. Like by default, most people just really want to be right.
Yeah. I don't tolerate that much. We let the data talk. We let the data decide. Data's king. And so, I mean, sure, we can try your way, do it your way. We'll do it my way, and we'll see which one works. And if yours works, I'm all in. And so I think that's like, there's no arbiter of truth that's arbitrary. Right. That just says you are now right. It's we can know this. Now, I think where it gets difficult is on the ones that you don't know, or let's say you have limited shots on goal. Which shot do we take? That's where it gets harder. And then we try and assemble as much data to support an argument. But I think fundamentally at the base level of entrepreneurship is you make approximated bets. Like by the time you have complete information to make a decision, the opportunity is gone.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we have to, and this also goes for beginners, because I think this actually, especially for beginners, is there's this fallacy that you're going to know everything before you can begin, and you simply cannot. And so you have to get over the discomfort of the unknown, and you have to get comfortable making bets of saying, okay, is this reversible? Yes. And to what degree is it reversible? Okay, if you lose all your money, is money replenishable? Yes. Okay. Now, how long will that take given my skill set? And that'll give you a degree of how big of a bet this is. Now, is there a way that I can make an approximated bet? Can I get a directional bet on this that would, give me a much better clue as to whether this bigger bet that I'm gonna make afterwards is correct? And so I'll try and make smaller bets that give me a little bit more information, that are a little bit more reversible before making a big one. But like that was a big bet that we made with all the resources that I had and all my time for 16 weeks making all that. Now you could make the argument, okay, we gained audience that's not really core, and then that might hurt my later videos. And I've got, 50 more years. So, okay, we lost a quarter.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah, no, the willingness to try things I think is incredibly important. Yeah. You said earlier about courage. I want to go back to that. Yeah. So what is the most courageous thing you've done?
I actually think it's quitting my job. I think that's the hardest thing.
Back in the early days.
Yeah. Because I actually, weirdly, I think about this a lot. Like, what are the hardest things that I've done? Hard thing number one was quitting my job. Just the decision of quitting my job and then leaving Baltimore. Because I to give you everybody an idea, like, you see me now, but I was so afraid of my father's judgment and the few people that I knew from back home that I was going to like quit my white collar job to go start a gym and be a personal trainer, that I actually drove across the country and called them when I was already there, because I basically left in the dark of night. Like no one knew. I basically was a stowaway to my own fear. And so I had to
that's a way to say it.
I just drove there, and I called my dad, I think when I was going through Texas, and Texas is like forever when you're driving across it.
Yes, it is.
And I called him and I was like, hey, I'm gonna do the gym thing. And he was like, yeah, no worries. He's like, just, come over. We'll talk about it at lunch. Cause he would always talk me off the ledge. He'd be like, hey, you've got you did Vanderbilt. You did in 3 years. You got the good consulting job. He's like, you aced the GMAT. He's like, you're going to go to Harvard. You're going to get your MBA there or Stanford. You'll pick one of them. He's like, and you're set. Like, you're good. Just follow the plan. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And when I was like, I'm already gone, then like the flip, you know, then the thing that I was most afraid of was that he was freak out, which is exactly what he did. And the thing is that a lot of people would expect the story to be like, oh, my dad understood and he was super supportive. But he wasn't. We didn't talk for a few years after that because I was the prodigal son and I did everything to his plan. And I was living the most successful version of his life, not mine. And it was one of those realizations where you're like, I'm winning at a game that I didn't design.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually by default the loser. And so me quitting my job to then pursue fitness was the hardest thing I've done. The second hardest thing I've done was actually getting my gym to work. Because I had so little understanding of how anything worked. I had $50,000 saved up when I was 23 from the consulting job. I lived on basically nothing and almost banked all my pay. And I basically bet it all on the gym. I had $5,000 left after paying for all the equipment and everything else. And I had $5,000 a month in rent. And I had never sold anything to anyone. And so the idea of making $5,000, having never really sold anything to anyone in a local business, which I'd never had in California, which I was from Baltimore, I knew no one. So it wasn't like I could just get on my immediate friend group to come and at least pay the rent. I had no one. And so I think when I was like sleeping on the actual floor of the gym because I couldn't afford 2 rents, was when it like really hit me that no one was coming to save me. And like if I failed, I would have to go back and tell my dad he was right. And that felt like worse than death for me. And so that was incredibly hard.